countries will soon begin talks on providing a cheap subsidised food to more than two-thirds of the country as part of a new plan. Well, the government's food security ordinance, which is what this plan is being called, is expected to be taken up for consideration in Parliament in India on Wednesday. It's a scheme that will deliver much-needed grain to poor families who are having trouble feeding themselves. The World Bank says that some 37% of people in India, we're talking about 410 million people, live below the poverty line. To look at it another way, one-third of the world's poor are actually in India. Well, in principle, it's hard to argue against the case for cheap food in India, given all the people on the breadline. But what worries some people is the possible cost of supplying it and whether it means farmers will end up losing out, because, of course, a lot of people in India are subsistence farmers. Malika Kapoor shows us both sides of the story from Mumbai.
Anil Rajbhar lives in a traditional Indian extended family. At mealtime, 7 or 8 people eat together. The food goes fast. Rajbhar earned around $125 a month working as an electrician. He says his monthly food bill is double that figure. It's tough to feed the family, he says. I have to make compromises. Recognizing that millions go hungry every day and nearly half of its children under the age of 5 are malnourished, India passed a food security ordinance in July, one of the most ambitious food aid programs ever attempted. It guarantees very cheap food grains to almost 70% of India's 1.2 billion people. The food security bill has triggered a fierce debate in India. One side argues, morally, it's the right thing to do. Others say, economically speaking, India can't afford it. The government says food subsidies will cost around $25 billion annually, or around 0.8% of GDP. This economist says once you price in all the provisions of the bill, it will cost much more.
The cost could easily go up to another 0.5% of GDP. So you're looking at incremental cost about 0.5%. The total cost would then be 1.5% of GDP, which is very large by any standard.
Particularly for an economy that slowed to a 10-year low, is fighting high inflation and has a massive fiscal deficit. The food will reach the poor via India's current public distribution system, notorious for leaks and corruption. That's another drain on the economy. Given the troubling economics, this columnist says the timing of the food bill is politically motivated. India holds its general elections next year.
The Congress government has realized that it needs something that would overwhelmingly tilt the rural votes in its favor. And there cannot be a more landmark scheme or legislation or ordinance, whatever you call it, than to provide cheap cereals at something like prices as petty as rupees 1, 2 and 3.
Rajbhar will be able to buy 1 kilogram of rice for less than a cent. At the moment, he pays 50 cents for it. It will become so cheap, it will be really good for my family, he says. I really hope it happens. If it does happen, he tells us, the party that provides it will get his vote. Malika Kapoor, CNN, Mumbai.